Hello and welcome to a fourth session of the Acrylic Painting Club online school. I am Mara Trumbo of Art Expression Studio, Florida, and I'll be your teacher today. My love of swans has inspired me to design this video tuition class. I've decided on a vignette called Moonlight Swan Lake, and it's based on the many beautiful profiles you can see of these birds while they're feeding, preening, swimming, or just hanging out. So pick up your brushes and join me in this adventure. Nowadays, most art stores carry black primed canvases. If you wish to use a white one, however, just prep the entire background with a coat of black gesso or acrylic paint. Measure your horizon line as per written instructions, tape it across, get your brushes, pattern, graphite paper ready, and we'll begin. For best results, we'll be using all Deco Art products, and here I have loaded up a palette with Traditions acrylics, showing phthalo blue, cerulean blue, alizarin crimson, wicker white, and in a little cup I have the extender and blender. So now we'll commence with our sky. Bearing in mind this is a vignette, okay, we're only going to start painting from the center out. You'll see the phthalo blue actually is not very visible on a black canvas. It's very transparent, so together with the phthalo blue I'm picking up a little white. And as you go crisscross, you're already forming your clouds. Of course, this has been speeded up for expediency, so you won't be painting at this speed. But the extender allows you a lot of open time, so your acrylics become almost like oils, very manageable and very blendable. So here and there I'm going to pick up white, and as I pick up the alizarin crimson together with the blue that's already on the brush, this will be forming a nice soft pastel purple color. I'm going to leave a little bit more white in the middle. Now at this stage you have a choice of painting a full moon if you want to, and I like doing them finger painting if I do it round, but this is actually a moon behind the clouds and only its light will be shining on the lake, so it'll be a softer picture for you to paint. But the choice is always yours. Always encourage my students to break out of the box and insert their own ideas onto any of my paintings. Change the colors if you wish. As we go down towards the horizon, the color will be lighter, and here I'm mixing a little bit cerulean blue with the white. Note I have not cleansed the brush at any stage, but it depends on the speed you wish to do the sky at. And if your phone rings and if you stop for a cup of coffee, please do wash your brush in between changing colors. The only thing I ask you to do is do not paint a stripe right across of different color. Always have a little bit of the previous color on your brush as well as the new color you're starting to paint with, and that way it ensures a transition, a smooth transition of colors, as well as the softness. A little bit more white at the bottom. Now you'll see I'm not painting to the ends because this is a vignette, okay? So at the bottom on the horizon line, yes, you may go right towards the edges, but in between it's best to leave it soft. I also like finger painting, so you'll see me switch from brush to fingers in a little while, but here I'm just smoothing some of the lines. You can do clouds more accentuated if you like. And here we go, finger painting like if we were children over again. I have not fixed my canvas very well on my easel, so the wobbles are not the earthquakes in Florida. They don't exist here. It's just my canvas moving around. I often wonder how come I still have fingerprints on my middle finger when I so often paint and rub it on rough surfaces like wood and canvas. It's a miracle I still have those lines in my DNA. Of course, you could be doing this with your mop brush, not your finger, if you don't want to get your hands dirty, and some of you may even wish to wear gloves. We're going to remove the tape to expose the waterline. and transfer your swan pattern with the white graphite. Now, I recommend you don't transfer all the feather lines. And if you do need them later on as a guideline, you can retrace them. But at this stage, I would only like you to do the outline of the swan. And you can position him as far right or as far left as you like. Just don't put him dead center in the mirror, in the middle. This is always considered a no-no by all artists. We'll begin painting the water on the pond. And normally, when I paint a seascape, I would always put the dark towards the horizon because the water is deeper, and the lighter color towards the shore, as the colors pick up a lighter shade on the beach. In this instance, since this is a pond and the moon is shining on it, I have decided to double load the brush with white and the phthalo blue and horizontal strokes, very soft, and then you'll start zigzagging them to form water lines. We're going to imitate the sky colors, remember, on the water, so you'll be picking up a little bit of alizarin crimson in between the blue and a little bit of the white, and this forms your water lines as well as the movement of the water and the swan that's swimming across it. So zigzag, zigzag along the water. If it's too much pink, you just pick up a little bit more blue, and vice versa. The colors are interchangeable, don't forget. Now, when we get to underneath the swan, his reflection will create vertical lines. So push it down on a dry brush effect. And we'll be touching this over and over again. It won't be just a one-stroke exercise. We'll be going over it a few times so you can enhance the dark water or the light as you go along. And the feathers coming on his body will cover the tracing lines, so you don't want anything left that you're going to see tiny little white lines along, like sometimes it happens when you paint watercolors because you can't avoid covering pencil marks, but we don't want this when we're painting in acrylics. So continue zigzagging right down towards the edge of your canvas, but again, you're not going right down. I'm also pulling some of the strokes from the bottom up. More water lines here. And of course, we'll be smudging the edges as well. So the reflection of the water will be pushed down vertically and the waves horizontally. You can side load your brush with white and blue on the other side and start doing semicircles around the swan. These will be like swimming lines that any movement on water will create. Break those lines, don't make them solid. I so enjoy doing this painting, and I've painted it a few times in oils as well, and every time it comes out different, of course. Here's more of the shimmer coming down from the white, and make sure you do this while the paint is still fresh. You can always add it at the end when we do an overall analysis of the painting and see where we need more highlights and more shadows, but it's always best to paint wet on wet, especially when you're on the water and in the sky. A lot of students think that wet on wet is limited to oil painting only. Not at all. Especially with extenders nowadays and glazes, you can obtain the same results using acrylics, and of course it's much quicker, and especially if you're traveling and you're doing a workshop, this would be my favorite method of painting, or I should say medium. Okay, now for the water further back, you want to do a cradle motion. Don't make them into U's because otherwise your waves will look like a stormy sea. Okay, this is tranquil water, so you just want to do basically little smiley lines and overlapping them. And you'll be doing it on both sides with a little bit of white on the blue and the alizarin crimson purplish color that you've created there by mixing the crimson with the blue. Check it all round, come back up, and we can always come back later to enhance it. It's now time to remove the tape, which will leave you a line at the back, which is preferable because the swan will be so white and the contrast of the dark background will enhance it. Now, some of the feathers of swans which I've studied on internet, and please you do the same, some of the swans have longer feathers in the tail end and some of them have it at the beginning of the wing. So what we're going to do for the white feathers to stand out, obviously we would need a darker base than white. I am using the dark gray mixed with extender. So the silvery effect you get, it's from the extender shining against the light. You want to do perhaps a section at a time if you don't feel comfortable doing the whole bird at once. So start with if you right-handed like I am, start painting from the left side. If you're left-handed, start painting from the right side so you don't get into trouble so often. Although with acrylics drying so quickly, it's not as bad as when you're painting oils and have a smudge. Try not to cover your lines in between at this stage. We will cover them later, but this way it gives you a division of where your wing ends and your chest starts. And at this stage we're not going to do his neck and his head, just the wings, the breast and the tail end. So once we have the dark gray positioned, we're going to take our round brush, load it in the light gray all around and the tip with white, and we're going to start painting the feathers, denoting them with teardrop strokes or feather strokes. So you put more pressure at the beginning of your stroke, and as you diminish it, the white will wear out, the light gray underneath will take over, and because you're also diminishing the pressure on your brush as you come to a point, your feathers will be basically shaping themselves. We can go back and tip the feathers white at a later stage. Now the moonlight is kissing the top, so the whitest feathers will be around the wingtips, and as we come down they'll be a little bit grayer. Now here I've chosen to do the bigger feathers on the beginning of the wing where it's attached to the body, but you can do it the other way around, longer feathers on the tip coming down, diminishing to soft dawn, which are tiny little fluffy feathers. Sometimes your quilts and pillows are filled with it, and that's where they come from. Ducks and swans, I guess chickens too. So continue with your feather strokes. Make sure that you're going in the direction that these feathers grow, overlapping and not always just side by side like little soldiers, some longer and some shorter, but they do form like lines of progression. Now right at the bottom they become small. As I said, it'll be down over there, down, excuse me. And tiny little feathers at the back. That's his tail end. We're now doing the right wing, which is actually the inside of the wing you'll be seeing. So the top will be catching more light, but coming inwards they'll be a little bit darker, especially as the neck will be casting its shadow there. Down feathers are nothing but little pat, 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 pat with your tip of your brush. And then the feathers will be getting a little bit longer as they go towards the back there. So this is the breast. Again, tap, tap, tap with little feather strokes. And you can start with the white in the middle, which is brighter than the sides, because it'll be three-dimensional with his chest being convex. So you can pick up some, oops, little smudge there. So pick up a clean brush with just water on and rub it out if you're still in time. In this case, the paint was still wet, so I had no problem erasing it out. If it should be dry already by the time you realize you've smudged it, just go over it with a sky color again. Here I'm reinforcing some of the color on the back of the breast. And as the canvas starts absorbing color, you'll notice that the white becomes grayer. So you pick up a little bit more white and refresh your highlights. At this stage, I'm still seeing a few of the tracing lines, but if they're still there after I finish touching them up, we can just erase those with a wet brush. Okay, more extender now. We're going to do the neck and the head. A little bit at the side and the bottom of his beak. And on his head, less extender on his head because it makes it easier when you pat the little strokes. Okay, switching back to a little round brush, and it's pat, pat, pat all the way down. Of course, we'll be putting white first and stronger in the center again to make it look three-dimensional, and we'll create the shadows afterwards. Now again, remember while you're watching this that I have speeded up this film 4 times as fast as I was actually painting, or you'd be yawning by this stage if I had to keep the speed at the regular painting stroke. I'm just straightening up his neck. At this stage you see a heavy black line there, and we're going to make it grayer later on, but if you do prefer the strong contrast between the black and the white, you're welcome to leave it in. I will be showing you both ways. Now the top of his head is got the strongest white, and of course as he comes round on the contours, you'll be absorbing a little bit more of the gray there. And as you come down towards his beak as well and the side of his cheek. That comes to a V pattern, almost like he's wearing a little bonnet. And then his cheek comes round underneath his eye, a little bit on the other side of the cheek, and the rest will be of a different color. Again, reinforcing the white there, which is absorbed quite a lot, as you can see. As soon as I put my brush down, you can see the contrast between the previous white and the one I'm putting on now. So this will be a layering effect that you'll be doing, in fact, because, as I said, of the absorption of the cotton canvas. But if you prefer him more subtle, then you're welcome to leave it as it was. That protrusion above his beak, I couldn't find actually a term for it. I looked it up, and there's no way that I can find a name for the terminology of that little bump on his forehead. So we'll just call it a protrusion, and to make it look as though it's standing out, I've outlined it in gray. We're now painting the black triangle on his beak and the black area. You could leave it a canvas color, but I prefer to paint it so that it has the same little sheen as the rest of the painting. So that's black. His pupils will be black. The top of his beak will be black. And a little gray on his eye socket. We'll set them back in. And a little bit more black on his little bump. We'll bring it out again. So we're just going to reinforce that with black. A little bit there. And now, because his beak is going to be orange with yellow highlights, and they're both transparent colors, you need to base coat this in white first. If you do it on black, it'll almost disappear. And while we have the white paint on the brush, we're going to put the highlight in his eye, a little dot on both sides, or even 2 little dots, bearing in mind the eye on the right, it's smaller, so a smaller dot. So now that the white is dry, we'll put on some orange paint as a base coat. Still showing pretty soft at this stage because the white is underneath. And in the middle, we're going to dab some yellow. So now you can see it's starting to brighten up. I made a little boo-boo there, can you tell? So with water and finger, we get it out and smooth it back into the sky. There we are, gone. Boo-boo gone. Okay, so now we're going to do some water lines while the nose, or the beak, excuse me, is drying. And we're going to shadow these a little bit. You could go black, but I prefer the dark gray here because the swan is casting a little shadow there. And this is the time to correct if you've gone overboard with his size of his neck like I did. I'm just cutting it back to size. Reinforcing the whites again. And then the sides with the light gray to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. And of course, as you come down into the shadows, and again here, if you prefer the darker gray or leaving it black, the choice is yours. We'll be reshadowing this areas later on, and for shadow colors I always use darks as in purple. So this is where you check your highlights and your shadows. And I'm sorry, the head is just a little bit out of camera range, but basically I'm patting his head, the soft little down feathers, and his cheek. And here we're just strengthening some of the feathers over there. And I'm seeing a little bit missing at the bottom right chest, and I'll be correcting that later on. And this step could be done at the very end if you prefer, but I thought while I've got all the brushes out and the paint is still fresh, I will do it all in one operation. So lighter feathers on the top, and as you come down, they get a little bit darker because they're coming into shadow. Bring out some of the feathers at the back, the more spiky than the rest of the body. Okay, for the shading, we're going to side load your flat brush number 12 with darks as in purple and extender on the other side. So as we come down, I'm also going to have a big wet brush on standby because I want that middle to be pure white. I'm just removing some of the purple there, shadow there, and that's dividing the neck from the breast, and now dividing the breast from the wing. The top of his neck from the right wing, and the bottom of the wing as well needs to be in shadow. Of course, there's shadows under his beak or bill. Both of them are correct terminology, the bill or the beak. And a little bit under his cheek, and then his tail. And on the tail you can actually pull some of the purple in between the little feathers. Of course, the bottom, the water will be reflecting on him, and there's shadows there, so we'll be going there with a little bit of purple as well. A little bit on his bit of white that's coming down. And I've put two little nostrils at the side of his beak too. Now with a little bit of the aquamarine and white, double loaded on the brush, I'm going to make more water lines. And as this water is coming closer to us and probably more shallow, I like the change of blue. And of course his reflections need to be refreshed, so downward strokes with your flat brush. You can even use your comb brush here if you have it. And why not even the mop brush? Many ways of obtaining the same result. And then after you've come down vertically, you can go horizontally a little bit to blur it out. More water lines. And all you're doing is like a session of number 3s, skirting around the water in an oval shape, left and right. We're going to strengthen his beak as well, so a little bit more highlight yellow on top and a little bit more shadow in orange on both sides. This will complete your swan, and we'll be going into an impressionistic weeping willow. Weeping willows have long strands of what actually is a lot of tiny little leaves all onto one long stem, drooping normally towards the water. In this case, it'll be more impressionistic, so this is how we're going to go about it. Double loading your brush with dark and light green. We're going to come down into little waving patterns, almost like little ribbons. So you will hold your brush straight, then flat, then straight again, and drag it to a very thin end at the bottom. Again, I'm speeding up this film, and I'm also adding here and there a little bit of yellow to change the color of the green, which is going to be lighter, especially as it gets towards the right side of the moon. Your strands will be longer on the left, and they'll be becoming gradually shorter on the right. And you'll be overlapping some, and you can change the colors as well if you prefer to add some blue with the yellow to form yet another different green color. And then switch over to your liner brush for final highlighting effects. So this is what it'll look like at the end by the time it hits the beginning of your sky. Don't fuss too much about it. Remember, this is just an impressionistic look at weeping willows. Of course, if you're painting on a larger canvas, you might want to get more detailed. Little strokes, and you can use extender or water to make them much thinner, and your paint should be like ink-like consistency at this stage. We now move on to paint the water lilies and the lily pads on the pond. And the shape of a lily pad is actually almost like a round pizza with a slice missing out of it. But you're seeing it from the side, not from the top as the bird flies. So this will be more oval, ecliptical. And what I like to do is I like to double load my brush with dark and light green and do some with the green on the center and light on the side, and then some in reverse. The flowers themselves you can base coat with your favorite color, put a little bit of the pollen or the little pestals inside, and then paint the teardrop petals around it. Now remember, it looks like a little teacup, so start from the back and make these a little lighter color of the shade because you've got the moon reflecting on that, and then the ones on the underside will obviously be a little bit darker. And as long as you clip the petals all going similarly as the feathers from outside in towards the center, you can re-strengthen the pestle color in the middle. And here's your first lily sitting on its pod. We put little calyx at the bottom and strengthen the shadow of the dark green on the one side. Perhaps do a little outline, enlarge the leaf a little bit, and then put in the segments that almost make it look like the segments of an orange. And that again is impressionistic, so you don't have to be so botanically correct. Change your greens by adding a little bit of blue into the green as well, so the ones at the back will be smaller, and the slice that's open could be facing at the front, at the back, or on the side. Don't make them all exactly the same. Your flowers will go from very light pastel colors to dark, and you can start them just from the petals and then add the pistils afterwards, or the other way around. You can make some of the petals pointed a little bit more, and if you look at water lily photographs on internet, you'll see that some have got rounded, beautiful almond shaped petals, and some have got little spiky petals. So like people and animals, there's a few varieties out there. Not all the lily pads have a flower. Some have just got a stem sticking up. Some have nothing, they're just greenery. A bud, an opening bud, would be 3 little teardrops on a stem. And you've seen here, I've already painted one under the swan. Now he can be swimming behind it or coming on top of it, depending on how you want to do it. As you move further back, obviously your leaves will be a little bit smaller. And don't make them all equidistant. They're impressionistic again, so there are little blobs here and there, and some will show more details than others. And then as you get further back, you almost just touch the lake waters with a bit of green and yellow paint. You don't have to show any details at all. This is a fun part of the painting. You're getting more relaxed towards the end. You're feeling more confident with your strokes. So take as much time as you like. Again, remember that the backlit petals will be lighter than the ones in the front. And mix your colors by all means. You know, you get beautiful oranges coming with your alizarin crimson and your yellow. And water lilies come in all shapes and sizes, and some of the one stroke, as you can see here, little closed buds will just be on a very short stem, because they both tend to grow at the same time. The flower and the stem gets elongated as the bloom grows. I like using my filbert brush to do some of the edges. And if you like them scalloped like this, then by all means you can use it for every one of your lily pads. Here again, I'm just doing a quick leaf in the 2 colors. And the one in the front is obviously bigger and brighter than all of them. So I've started the petals going from the inside out. I actually prefer them going from the outside coming in, but it's all fair game in love, painting, and war. So again, the front is darker, and then you can touch them up as you like. More little spiky ones at the back, some at the front. Unite them so that it's almost closed like a little teacup would be. Put your calyx and your stem in. Brighten up a bit of the pollen on the inside. Darken the base a little bit more. And here you are. Now we'll touch up the leaf. The little calyx holding the bloom up, and then that is a little bit too yellow, so you just walk it in, and put a little bit more green on that side. So to make them sit on the water, you bend the leaf a little bit, as you can see. And now you could either bring the leaf over the feathers of the swan, or the swan can just sit on top of this lily pad as he's swimming across the water. The stars are nothing but the shape of a cross done with a fine liner brush and liquid white. Practice these on paper, smudge them if you can with your finger or with a wet brush to give you that glossy effect. So this is your water sparkle, and the sky ones will be done exactly the same. So enjoy your starry, starry night on a moonlit lake. I certainly enjoyed producing and filming it for you. And until next time, happy painting, and thank you for using the Acrylic Painting Club online class.